Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, 3:30 a.m. on the dot here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, I've had to restart this video 3 times already because I just run too long. So I'm going to have to center right in on one specific thing that I want to talk about. Okay, former Trump Defense Secretary Mark Esper just came out with a book. It's called The Sacred Oath. In this, he talks about how he was approached by Trump on several occasions, and he talks about these insane things, insane ideas that Donald Trump had, that he asked his defense secretary, hey, can we do this? And I'm just going to focus in on one or two things, because there's a lot. Okay, in this book, Mark Esper claims that Trump asked him a couple times, hey, maybe we could fire some missiles into Mexico at the drug labs. Seriously, this is the guy you want to reelect 2024. Now, I'm sure the people out there that praise Trump's Great Wall and complain about the immigration at the border probably think this is a good idea. But you know what? Just this morning, I thought about Nancy Reagan. This is the first time I thought about this. The war on drugs. I just thought about that this morning. It should have been the war on addiction. I'm going to tell you guys what I used to do. I had to get heroin every day, especially on holidays. I had to see my family, and I could not get out of bed. I could not function. You know, bad physical things would come out everywhere. I couldn't walk unless I got this fix every day. And holidays were important, so I'd have to get it ahead of time. But if I got it ahead of time, I'd use it before the holiday. I had to have it every day. I'm going to tell you guys what would happen when I couldn't get it. And it's the most insane freaking thing. And this is my argument. Donald Trump and people like him think that, well, if we just get rid of the drugs, people are just going to say, hey, maybe I can't get the drugs anymore, so I'm going to go into rehab. No, a lot more dangerous things are going to happen because the person's still going to have a flaming urge and drive to his addiction. It's not just going to stop. And this goes on for days, weeks, and months. All right. And then another question I want to ask too, was Trump talking about like the cartel mansions? Was he talking about the labs? Because the labs are a dime a dozen. They just use very cheap labor. I mean, hitting one lab, I don't think would even, or 2 labs, or a dozen labs, would even affect the flow to the United States for a day. And if it did, it would not have the results that Donald Trump or his minions are looking for. I don't know if any of you have seen A Day of Roses, I think it was called, with Tony Randall. I saw this in rehab. It's a black and white film, and it's about an alcoholic couple, and it's nighttime, and the package store closed, and they couldn't get the booze, more booze. An alcoholic has to constantly have alcohol. And people like this, they'll go to you've probably heard this, they go to isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol, which doesn't even get you high, it'll make you blind or dead. But alcoholics will do this. They'll drink mouthwash, anything with alcohol in it. That's the same thing that will happen. Mark, I did it. It's the exact same thing that will happen. If Trump's idea were to work, and it was to cut off the flow of drugs. Not to mention that drugs like fentanyl or methamphetamine aren't made in fields. They're made well, the fentanyl is made in China, so it wouldn't affect that. Methamphetamine can be made anywhere, absolutely, in cars, in basements, anywhere. So that wouldn't have an effect. I don't know, is he talking about the coca fields? Because cocaine is almost interchangeable. Actually, methamphetamine is better and stronger than cocaine for an addict. So that would just switch the addict over to, I'm not, this is just about addiction. It's not about poking holes in Donald Trump's ridiculous theory, which it is a ridiculous theory, but it just wouldn't work. I'm going to tell you guys what I used to do. I'd forgotten about this too. It's been 15 years. My drug addiction progressed. I started with psychedelics and weed. I moved up to cocaine and selling it. I then moved to crack, Oxycontin, and I didn't just stop the others. I just added new drugs in, and eventually heroin. Okay. Just so you understand this, you have to have that every single day, or right in the morning. First, you have to get the money, then you have to get the drug. right as soon as you wake up, you're going into withdrawals. It only lasts for maybe 8, 10, 12 hours. You have to have a continuous supply. It's a continuous search, nonstop, 24 hours a day job to get money and the drug. It is a hell beyond anything you could imagine. And you can't just stop. And once you realize how screwed you are, you're there. You can't stop. All right. There were days, especially on holidays, worst of all, where I had to get my drug. At first, I would get the money. Usually, I wasn't a thief. I was a liar and a manipulator. I would do anything. I would say anything. Oh, my car died. I don't know how many times my car died. I got a flat tire. I had to get towed. I had to go to the hospital. Somebody was looking for money. Every day it was a new excuse. These aren't things I'm proud of. I'm proud of where I am today. And the fact that I don't have to lie about anything anymore. Getting back to that, though. There were days where I would get the money. There was a lot of these days. Maybe a couple times a month. Probably more than that. Maybe even once a week. Where heroin dealers are up early in the morning because they know the schedule of heroin addicts. Coke and crack dealers usually just get out of bed at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. This is the workings of the drug world. A lot of times, heroin addict you're gonna have a dealer, a main dealer, and you're gonna have backup dealers. So I'd get the money. I'd go to it back then. This was in 2005 and before. I'd go to a payphone because I couldn't afford a cell phone, or I needed money and drugs, and that was my world. So I'd go to a payphone and I'd try calling my dealer every single morning, but especially on holidays because I had to see my family. And the only way I could function without throwing up and messing myself and not being able to walk, shaking and stuff like that, was to get my fix. So there were days, though, especially on holidays when I needed it, when these dealers just weren't around. A lot of times they would go see their family. And there were days when I could not get my drug. And so the smart thing would be just wait maybe a half hour or an hour, call back, hold on to the money, right? I never did that. And this is insane. This is the point I want to make. I knew that getting cocaine or crack specifically, because the crack dealers, I could still get the crack. Getting crack would make my condition so much worse. When you're in with the heroin withdrawals and you use a stimulant like methamphetamine or cocaine, it makes you go into instant hard withdrawal. It pushes the remaining opioids off the receptors. I'm not a doctor here, so I'm not being, but you go from somewhat of withdrawals into hard withdrawals, throwing up and everything. And you don't really get a buzz. You just get incredibly sick when you use stimulants when you're withdrawing from opioids. It's a fact. All right. So what would I do? I'd have the money. I'd go to the payphone. Would I just go home or say, oh, maybe I should go into detox or rehab because I can't get my drug? This is the point I'm trying to make. No, every single time I would then go to a cocaine dealer, a crack dealer, because they'd be right there. They'd be right on the phone. And I knew this was the worst possible thing I could do. I knew it was not going to make me feel better. As a matter of fact, it was going to make me feel much worse instantly. And on top of that, I would spend the money that I just lied and manipulated to get. I'd spend it. So then I'd have to go through it all again while I'm sick, while I'm throwing up, and try to get more money later on. It would make my condition so much more worse. And I would do it every single time. There's not one time that I could even wait 10 minutes and call back the heroin dealer to see if maybe he's around. Not one time. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you why. I knew this. I knew it was going to make my day a living hell. It was the worst thing I could do. And I would do it every single time. When I couldn't get my drug, I would just go to something else that just would make me even feel 10 times worse, sick. That's what will happen. If you just happen to stop the flow of this or that, I could see people resorting to inhalants, anything legal. That's what's going to happen. Not to mention, I don't know any cartels personally, but I imagine if one of their fields or their labs or anything gets hit, they're probably going to move things into the area, like children, families, hospitals. They're going to combine the two. And, it only took me 5 minutes to think of that. I think it might go through the cartel's minds. So you might get 1 or 2 missiles in. I want to shout out to Bo of the Fifth Column here, because he's the one that could answer the impact government-wise, military-wise, financially, of sending missiles into Mexico. I have no idea from that end how badly things could go. But I'm going to tell you this. It is not going to make things better. It's going to make things worse. There's also I don't know how the cartels would react to this. There's such a thing as hot shots. That's where you give somebody too potent a drug intentionally with the purpose of ending them. I don't know how the cartels would respond to this. There could be repercussions. The addicts in the United States, if you could even manage to stem the flow for a day or two, it's just not going to get rid of the addiction. It didn't with me. I would do anything. I knew that these things would make me feel 100 times worse, and I did them anyway. I couldn't even stop myself for 10 minutes. I did this 100 times, 200 times at least. Not one time could I even wait 5 minutes. I'd just go for something else because it was a drug. I can't even explain it now, but I would do it every single time, knowing that it would make my whole world, my condition, my money, everything much, much worse, and I couldn't stop myself. And I guarantee you, if there's any other addicts watching this, they'll confirm what I'm saying. Addiction doesn't make sense. It's a mental issue. And people like Donald Trump look at it like it's a money issue or a bargaining issue or something like that. It's a mental health issue. It's not the drugs. It's the addiction. You get rid of the addiction. You treat the addiction. You're gonna stem the flow of the drugs. It's that simple. All right, you guys. There's so much more I could talk about on this. You guys have a good Friday.